Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specializes in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves, and our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
This is the Big Woods Bucks Podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine Master Guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-hosts Lee Libby and Joe Cruzy as they unlock the secrets of big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights into the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks Podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood. And once again, we're down here at Piling Lodge as usual. And got Joe sitting here. And
hello.
Good Lee.
Morning.
And Peaches Labbe.
Hello.
And we got Garnett again. So maybe we'll hear a couple more stories. But
I almost got rid of that name. Garnett brought it back today.
yeah.
We're on to either Mountain Goat Pete or Patches for me, though.
Yeah. The spring thaw is going to be at Lake Piling Lodge again, of course. And some of the things we got going on with it will be, there'll be 50 tickets available. So you want to get them quick. They're going to go on sale right after. When you hear this, they're on sale on the website. And they're $150 a piece. It's going to include the all-day event, and it'll put you in for all the raffles. And right now we've got over $5,000 worth of raffle prizes that come with that ticket. And the headliner will be one of our rabbit trackers. We're going to give away one of our rabbit tracker Big Woods Bucks Henry 22s. So that's pretty cool. And we're going to set it up in a format where it's going to be like round tables most of the day, where you can go and team members will be at different tables and talk with them about different subjects and stuff. It's going to be pretty fun doing it that way. And whoever buys the tickets, we're going to do a survey on how much, what topics you might be interested in or something.
Supposed to turn your phone off before, Hal.
Yeah, I know. I never get any calls. Anyway, it's going to be a fun time. Tickets will be right on sale. Like I said, as soon as you hear this, there's only 50, so get them while they're hot. Let's see. What else? Oh, we're going down the Maine Sportsman Show. It'll be the weekend, actually, before the spring thaw.
Yep.
And that'll be fun. And we're still pushing hard to get some more tickets sold for that. The Woodman Arms, a pair of muzzle loaders there for that.
And that we're going to draw that at the Sportsman Show, right?
I'm not sure. I think they want to try to get the young girl that we're sponsoring there to draw it. And I don't know if that's happening. But the tickets are going to end. The sales will end. The online sales will end before the show. So because the drawing will be right after, either at the show or at the end of it or that next week. But we will be selling tickets at the show. We got a way to do that where it's not going to be online, but you can still get a ticket at the show. So come out and support that good cause for the kids' cancer. And we got the big thing here. So finally, I've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and I think it's going to be a pretty neat thing. We want to start a chapter of Big Woods Bucks, maybe more than one, but the first one would be we're going to start one in the Midwest if there's the interest there. So it's up to you listening if you have interest in a chapter, and you'll be running it yourself. It'll need officers for it and all of that. But I think it'd be pretty cool to get your Midwest guys, whether it's Michigan and UP, Lower P, Wisconsin, Minnesota, kind of that area there, and get together and with like-minded people. I think it'll be pretty fun, and have a banquet annually. And to kick it off, I'll come out. Probably me and Chris will come out and meet everybody in that. So if you have an interest in this, and I know some people listening do because I've talked to a few people about it and a few of the hunters that have come here from that area. So the way we'll need to do it to kind of get it kicked off and organized is if you have any interest in that, you can email me. And then I'm going to put like the emails together into a, what do you call that? Group email, I guess would be. And so you can all be connected that way. And then maybe once you get connected, you can start talking on the phone. But there's a couple people out there that have expressed the interest in getting it kicked off and stuff that I know of. And one of them is in Michigan, and one of them's actually in Wisconsin. And the one in Wisconsin is Jerry Smith, and he deer hunted with me for 3 years. For 3 years when I started back in again here recently. So he kind of gets the gist of the hunting out here, especially, and knowing me and kind of how I think about it. So he's volunteered to kind of organize or help organize the kickoff of that.
Yep.
So anyways, and then it can go from there. I mean, the people interested in organize it and stuff and being part of it can get a hold of me, and then I'm sure you'll know friends and relatives or other people, and you can start promoting it there. So anyways, it'll be a fun thing.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. So anyways, just my email's hal@bigwoodsbucks.com. It's simple enough. So reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do. What else? He's got a lot of housekeeping stuff. Oh, anybody want to go moose hunting?
Everyone wants to go moose hunting.
Yeah. So Joe's got a tag. Joe drew an outfitter tag again this year. He's lucky. He seems to draw one every year.
No, I missed a year.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you get one every year too, or
yeah. And I'll be guiding on one. I don't qualify, but I got a buddy that has a lodge that. Yeah. Buddy besides Joe. Joe won't give me his, but
you never asked.
So there's 2 lodge tags available. Anybody interested in
just reach out.
Reach out to either Joe or
or
me, or email us or whatever, and we'll go from there if you're interested in it.
It's always a good time.
Good time. It's the hunt with a tag. It's a guaranteed tag because we got the tags, and then it's the hunt. And all the logistics and all that stuff, and they ain't cheap, but they're worth it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good program. The way they did it, I think. There's a
Well, the program
it
was started to help the outfitters in northern Maine because back around 2008 and stuff there that the economy tanked. It was rough on them because we lost a lot of the bear hunters, and some of them it's recovered some, and that was about the same time we had those. It's like a double whammy. We had those 2 bad winters, and the deer herd in northern Maine got, knocked way down, so the deer hunters weren't coming. So this was initiated as a way to help those northern Maine sporting camps, recover some of that lost income. So anyway, that's a little history on it. So go ahead, Joe. Don't keep nodding your head. You look like you're
I was.
What's next?
I was just going to say, I thought Rick was getting ready to talk. Rick was going to talk about some of his hunts this year, he said. So,
yeah. I think last podcast we covered the first 4 hunts maybe, and then I was home for a month or so.
Like I said, I was buck sharked.
I was helping Garnett recuperate. That took a month.
Yeah.
So, no, and then the next place we hunted was, we went down to the Berkshires. Neil called me, and no, we went to New Hampshire first. Neil called me, and that was the end of their rifle season because I was tagged out in Maine. So I said, yeah, I'll go over with you. And my son-in-law, Labbe, come over. And so we stayed at Neil's camp that night and over there the other side of Rangeley. And then we said, we'll just drive over to New Hampshire and hunt the next day. So we had some fresh snow there. And so we spent the night over to Neil's and got up. And we got over there and we went into a spot and hiked up on this mountain. And we split up. And we all found some buck tracks, but nothing big, really. And we met back, I don't know, like 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. We met back, and we all ran into each other. And I had found one decent buck track that looked like, yeah, he's probably like 180, 190, you know. He wasn't a big flat footer or nothing, but I says, yeah, he might have some good headgear. So Neil says, well, why don't I'll go with you, Rick. And he goes, I'm just going to film. So Neil came along, and we hunted together the rest of that day, and we tracked that buck right up onto the top of this mountain. And he got up into all these little blowdowns and bogs. It was just a perfect spot up there. You know, you knew you were going to run into deer. And all that old man's beard, there was trees down, old spruce down, and this buck was feeding every corner he'd go around, he'd be feeding and feeding. So I had my gun almost to my shoulder almost constantly. And we saw a few moose. We stalked up on. One was bedded like 30 yards from us. And we were watching that moose, and I felt the wind change to my back. And it was coming off my right side, right to the left off the top of that mountain. And all of a sudden that wind changed to my back, and that buck track was headed right up that ridge. I went, uh-oh, this ain't good. And he filmed that moose for about a minute, and he said, okay, let's go now. And so we started off, and we didn't go 50 yards, and that buck had laid down, and he winded us as soon as that wind changed because we hadn't made a sound. You know, it was good shooting right there. It was perfect shooting. And he had winded us, and you could see where he ran off. So I said, well, we blew that one. So I said, let's stay on him, see what he does. So we stayed on him, and he actually ran right over the top of that mountain. And he was a good-sized buck. I think he had I never really got a real good look at his horns, but I think he had pretty good headgear. But he was jumping, you know, like 20, 25 feet to a bound going downhill, jumping over blowdown. So you knew usually a smaller buck won't stretch out that far as those big ones. So we got down, and we come down off the mountain, and he started zigzagging and meandering. And I looked at Neil, and I said, he's forgot about us now. I said, maybe we'll get a crack at him here. We had 2 or 3 hours of daylight left. So we come down off the mountain, and all of a sudden I looked to my right, and he was under a fir, and he was just standing there, and that buck saw us just as we locked eyes, and he jumped and turned, and I swung and never got another look at him, so I didn't get a shot. And I said, let's run. And because I had just looked at my Onyx, and there was a tote road that I had driven up on early that morning that ran parallel with the mountain. And that buck, when he ran, I thought for sure he was going to run across that road. So we run down, and there was a little bit of an opening there where there was an old wood yard. It was grown up in some maple. And I got to that road, and we just stopped and stood, and Neil had the camera on, and we thought for sure he'd cross. He never come out. We waited like 2 or 3 minutes. Then we started hiking down the road, and he never crossed that road. It's like he knew that road was there and just what we were going to do. And he came down within probably 50, 75 yards of that road, and then he paralleled that road for 1.5 miles. He never crossed it, and he finally swung back up on the mountain. But we were in the deer all day. We saw quite a few does and might have seen a smaller buck. So we come back that night, and Levi come down with some flu bug, and he was sick as a dog. So I ended up taking him home, and Neil hunted by himself the next day or two there, and I don't think he killed one. So then the next trip we went to the Berkshires, and that was Joe, Jeff, Neil, me, who else? Glenn was there, yeah, And
Yeah, you did a whole podcast on that.
yeah,
from
we
down
did
there.
do a podcast down there.
Yeah.
And I messed up.
You guys, after that podcast, you guys got into it. That
Yeah.
was the day the snow was real bad, wasn't it?
Yeah,
After I left?
after the podcast, we got a lot of snow that night, especially up high. So we drove up into where we were parking at this trailhead and hiking up in. And the morning before at that trailhead, there was one really good buck track there that stood out above all the others. I mean, he was a 200-pound deer all day long. And I drove up that morning, and I just come right on to his track as soon as I got out of the truck. And I don't know what they were doing. I think there were some apple trees down in some of the houses, and they were going down there at night and feeding and then coming back across. He was following them does. So we got back up in there, and I took his track, and it was snowing pretty hard. And I come on to like 7 does laying down, so I stood there and watched them for a while and used my binoculars, and I just kept tiptoeing around. Finally, a couple of them, I think they knew something was up, and they got up, and they just kind of meandered off. And then one of them saw me, and she run off, and I never saw the buck, and his tracks were right there with all of them. Well, that buck he had left those does, and he'd gone uphill and kind of looped around like they always do, and he was laying under a fir tree that the limbs had come out on, and there was hardly any snow under that fir, maybe just 2 or 3 inches. And we had a foot of snow that morning. That was down low, and he was laying so he could just see my pant legs, down through the firs. So I got like within 50 yards of him, and he had already seen me. So he took off, and he went right up the mountain, straight uphill. So I took off after him, and he had seen me pretty good. So I says, there's no sense really waiting. I says, it's going to take me quite a while to get up that mountain because he was leaping. So I got up the mountain there, and the snow got deeper and deeper and deeper as I went. And he went a good mile before he slowed down. Well, then when he slowed down, he went to the right hard, and then he looped back to the left, and he stood there and he waited for me. So he saw me the first time. I saw what he did, and after he hooked right and then he hooked back left, I said, oh, he's going to do that again. Usually those bucks that do that, they do it multiple times during the day. Some of them are smarter than others. So that I stayed on his track, and he did it again. He went to the right, and by then the snow was to my knees. I mean, I was back in there probably 3 miles, almost to the top of that mountain, and it was pretty hard going. And he went to the right, so I said, I'm going to leave his track and kind of loop around to the left. Well, I looped around to the left, and I'm kind of through, and it's pretty open there. There's a lot of that buck brush, I call it, just like mountain ash almost.
Hazelnut, I think.
Yeah, you've hunted there enough times. That was the first time I've been down there. So I come to the left, and I see this body of a deer moving, and real quick I could tell he didn't have no headgear, and I knew it wasn't the buck I was after. But I just stood there, and he was coming from the direction my buck would have been because he had hooked to the right, and I figured he'd come back to the left again, just the way the wind was blowing. So I stood there a minute, and he went in behind this little ledge, and I said, yeah, he's going to come right out. I said, I'll get a better look at him. I said, maybe that other buck's around here right with him. And I started looking, and I see beyond him about maybe 50 yards beyond him. I could tell it was snowing and stuff, but I said, boy, that looks like a deer. And this is where binoculars come in handy. So I pulled him out, and Jesus, I said, that's a cocker. So there was a 10-pointer, and he was out past his ears, and he's just standing there, and all you could see was half his neck up because he was in behind a knoll. There was a big ledge knoll there. And he had walked around behind that rock, and he was just standing there kind of with his head out looking at me. Well, I tried to shoot him 3 different times, and my muzzleloader didn't go off, and that was my fault. Not shooting it enough and not being familiar enough. I basically grabbed it, went hunting, and I shot it once, and I forgot to cock it all the way. And I opened it 3 times, and I actually cocked it by chance when I didn't realize Joe told me what happened when I got back, and I go, yep, you're right. So I tried to squeeze on him 3 different times, and he just stood there. And when I finally did squeeze, I think, having such a small target, plus I didn't expect it to go off after 2 times not going off. When it finally went off, I shot right beside his neck, and I hit the tree behind him. So he took off, and he looked like he was hit when he took off. I had high hopes. So I got up there, and I was like, oh, no blood. So I stayed on him for 2 or 3 more hours there, and he just kept going and going, so I gave up on him.
That's a common thing. it's a good setup the way that gun is.
It's
because
perfect.
You want to be intentional when you cock it and know that it's ready to go, but you want to make sure
that red button's down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of guys, I think.
That was on that Woodman Arms. And I shot a 10-pointer with it last year in muzzleloader season, and I but I'd shot it quite a bit and getting it sighted in and all that, so I was pretty familiar with it. And this time I made the mistake of not shooting my rifle enough, and
Yeah, that I've done that when I first got it.
We all
and
done
I finally realized I just look down, make sure I can see that orange little tab sticking down.
Yeah. So I ended up coming home, I think, that next day. We hunted the next day. Me and Neil did again, and I don't think any of us killed a deer on that trip. We all saw bucks the next day, and half of them had lost their horns. Neil got on the buck that I'd missed the day before, and he said it was that same track, and he caught up with him, and no horns. He lost them overnight. I think it was that deep snow stressed him out.
Oh, yeah. Because they usually down there keep them longer, you know what I mean? But that stress got to them, and it's kind of ironically back up this way, the deer held them a lot longer because we had like an easier.
I think they were so used
winter.
to it down there. When they got that deep snow, it stressed them early because they're not used to it. Yeah. So then I had a couple weeks off to recuperate, and I drew Iowa tag this year. So I went to Iowa and I hunted with this guy Jeff Mealy, and boy, he had some big bucks. He's got a 150-inch minimum, which is kind of what I look for. Usually if I'm going to go hunt out of state, you try to go somewhere where they got like a 140 minimum anyway. But with a 150 minimum, they got to pass them smaller bucks, and there's going to be some good ones there. So I hunted this one farm, and I saw the first farm I hunted, I see a 10-pointer that was probably in the 160s. He was a beauty, and he told me there was like 180, 190-inch buck there, so I'd let him go. That was the first day. I saw like 7 bucks that first day, and so I went back, hunted there the next day, and didn't see any bucks. It's just like it, you know how it goes. Dried it up. Probably there was a hot doe, and she was somewhere else.
Was this a muzzleloader hunt, Rick?
Yeah, muzzleloader, and that's the other thing. So I bought this new muzzleloader, long-range muzzleloader, Arrowhead muzzleloader this year, just for hunting out west, and because a lot of the places out west, a 300-yard shot is pretty common with a muzzleloader, and most muzzleloaders you can't make that. So I bought this long-range muzzleloader, and I got out there and I shot it quite a bit. It was dead on. The gun shot great, and I mean, it's a 500-yard rifle. So I ended up coming back that second night, and he says, "Yeah, I got another farm." He says, "I want you to go hunting." He goes, "I got 2 real giants over there." So I'm like, "Yeah, I always like hunting new spots anyway. It's more about the hunt anyway than seeing deer most of the time." So he put me on this farm, and the first night there, I got over there that afternoon, and I went in there and hunted around a little bit, and he showed me the whole block. He says, "You can hunt however you hunt and kill deer." He says, "I don't care if you sit, I don't care if you stalk or whatever." He goes, "You do what it takes to kill a big buck." And he goes, "There's nobody else hunting this farm." So I said, "Perfect." So the first night I just sat, and I see a 10-pointer come out. He had really white horns, and he was at 504 yards. I ranged him, and I didn't feel comfortable. I just got this gun, and if I'd had my other long-range rifle, I mean, I feel comfortable with that. But this new muzzleloader, and I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to take the shot." So I got down out of the stand, and I tried to cut the distance. Well, by the time there was a big knoll in that field, and then it went up to a fence line, and it was all CRP, and it was all woods behind me, and there was a bunch of big draws there. And so I said, if I can hit that fence line, I'll use that for cover, and I'll run. Well, I get out of that stand, and it had warmed up. Well, there was no running, because after the first 5 steps, my boots were about this big with mud. And that mud from Iowa, it'll cake on, and you can't scrape it off. So I'm trying to go, and by the time I get up to where I could get a shot, and I'd cut the distance to like 280 yards, right when I got to that knoll, and there he was. I could still see his body, and he'd pick his head up, and all you could see was horns. And he was in the 170s all day long. He was a giant, you know. And
You had a video of two of them that were big.
yeah, so that was the next day.
Oh.
So I look at my watch, and it was 2 minutes past legal by the time I had made it. I had 10 minutes, but it took me that long. It took me 12 minutes to get there. So I said, well, I'll shoot him tomorrow. I had 3 or 4 more days to hunt. I think it was a 6-day hunt. So I said, I'm going to set up. I know where he came from. I said, I'm going to set up tomorrow morning. And I said, I know where he's headed to. And I said, I'm going to try to cut him off on his way back at daylight. So that's when I sat in that draw, and these 2 9-pointers come by. And they were, one of them was probably 150-inch deer. Them 2 9s come by, and I videoed them, and a bunch more smaller bucks come by. And so I didn't see that big one that day. So I was kind of holding out, and I got back to camp that night, and I said, I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow morning. So I went back, sat in that draw that morning, right where I saw those 2 9-pointers. And so this new muzzleloader, it's a heavy gun. It's 10, 11 pounds. It's made for just long range. It's not a gun to walk with. And I said, I'm going to sit about 2 hours. And I said, then I'm just going to sneak and poke, sneak and peek into the wind. That's what I like to do. And so I started sneaking around, and I saw quite a few deer and saw a few decent bucks. And finally it got like 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I said, I'm going to go back to my stand and have a sandwich back to where the stand was, because there was a heater there, and it was pretty cold. I'd been sitting on the ground in a thicket. And I come up over this knoll, and I see this buck down to my left walking on the fence line. He was an 8-pointer, probably 120-inch deer. And so I stood there a minute and watched him, and I looked, and there's another buck coming behind him. So I said, geez, I'll stay right here. Maybe there's another one, bigger one coming. So I kind of got down in that CRP. Well, I still had my muzzleloader on my left shoulder, okay? The bolt's on the right-hand side, and I got it on my left shoulder. And I'm kind of knelt down, and I got my binoculars, and I'm watching those 2 bucks. And this is a fatal mistake right here. I looked to my right, just glanced over after about 5 minutes, and I looked, and there's 8 or 9 does standing at 80 yards, and this giant buck he had kicker points. He had a little short drop tine. I figured he was a 190-inch deer all day long. He's standing there right in the middle of these does, and he's looking right at me. And so I slid that muzzleloader off my shoulder, pulled it up, put it directly on him. And when a deer doesn't really make you out, they'll kind of like move their head back and forth, and they're actually walking towards you. He hasn't locked onto me yet. I'm thinking, he's dead. I got him. And I pulled the trigger, and it went click. You heard the firing pin and everything, and I went, oh, man, my primer didn't go off. So I looked down, I pulled the bolt out, and I looked, and there's no dent in the primer at all. And immediately I knew what happened. So this long-range muzzleloader, it doesn't lock down. When you put the safety on, it's got a rifle safety because it's got a Remington action, okay? And my other long-range gun's the same. It doesn't lock the bolt down. So when I pulled that gun off my left shoulder, it caught my jacket, and it pulled that bolt maybe like a third of the way up. And if you do that, it won't go off because it doesn't allow the firing pin to go all the way. So just as I closed it back down, I look up, and he's running away. So I went back to the stand, and I said, well, I'll give him a couple hours. I was sick. I was like, oh, man, I really blew that. And I figured he might cross, because half the does went across the field, and the other half went back where they came from. I said, maybe he'll come out of there and go back for those does. I'll give him a couple hours. And he didn't, so I went looking for him and never ran into him. I think he ran right out of that piece of woods I was hunting and onto the neighbors.
I bet if you talk to Jeff and Mark, they could put together a 500-yard woodman.
Oh, I already talked to him.
Okay.
Actually, it's just the barrel.
Right.
So he's going to make me a barrel for the woodman. And, I mean, if I'd had that woodman, he'd have been dead easily.
Hey, Hal here. I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with OnX Hunt. I've been using it for a while now, and if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a very techie person, but the OnX app is it's a real time saver. I remember the days when we poured over topo maps everywhere we was going to go and stuff, and I don't do that quite as much anymore. Where it's really helped me is scouting, whether it's deer scouting, a moose, or even turkey hunting in the spring, which I do. It
it really helps out. I don't have to spend as much time running around the truck burning up the gas. I'm just basically using my Onyx. Got it on my phone. Don't even carry a GPS anymore. So I just download the areas where I'm going to be hunting, whether it's up north moose hunting, and I use it mostly on the satellite imagery. I like to see the cuts and the clearings and the turkey hunting, the hidden fields and stuff. But everybody's using it now, from the game wardens to land surveyors, and just a great tool. And with our partnership with Onyx, if you use a code BWB, you're going to receive 20% off on your first premium or elite memberships. And you just go to onxmaps.com/hunt. You'll be glad you did. Good luck on the trail.
Hey, Hal here, and I want to tell you about Spearfish Forest Products. They're still hiring for skilled labor. They filled some of the other positions, but they're particularly looking for millwrights, electricians, and saw filers. And the locations for these would be Spearfish Forest Products in Spearfish, South Dakota, and Montrose Forest Products in Montrose, Colorado, a division of Neiman Enterprises. Same benefits. They got access to public land available for all outdoor activities. They're doing sign-on bonuses. There's free health care for employees and families, 401k with a company match, and also relocation assistance. So anybody interested in moving and you have any of those skills, you can contact John Fennelson at 307-760-7907 or email hr@Neiman, NEIMAN.com. And their website is NeimanEnterprises.com. Hope you get a position and enjoy it out west.
As you all know, Big Woods Bucks is devoted to promoting the best equipment for tracking and still hunting the big woods. Part of that equation for success is the sights that sit on your hunting rifle. We've chosen Skinner Sights as the company to produce our custom-built BWB Tracker Series peep sight. It's constructed of solid steel, has our custom ghost ring, and was co-developed by some of the best trackers in the world. To get yours, go to bigwoodsbucks.com and click on the Optics tab.
Yeah. So then I come home from that hunt for 3 or 4 days, and then my last hunt was Arizona, which was that's an archery hunt. This is my 4th year, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to Arizona in the desert hunting mule deer with a bow and arrow, but it's the toughest, most challenging hunt I've ever been on. And I mean, just because it's so tough, I love it. And I mean, there are some giant muleys there. I mean, 30, 32, 33-inch wide bucks, and I see them every year. And they're so smart out in that desert, you know, and it's not really rolling or anything, so you can't, it is pretty mountainous, but usually when you see them, they're on a side hill or doing something, so, and there's cactus everywhere, so trying to belly crawl is almost impossible, or down on your knees, you know, you're going to end up full of cactus. So the first day we hunted a unit we hunted last year, and we saw a few bucks and nothing big, nothing I wanted to shoot. And Nancy was with me. She came out. She loves going on that trip, just glassing and looking for deer and stuff. So Mike says, yeah, we'll go to another unit tomorrow, Ricky, because we've never hunted before. He says, there's some really big deer in this unit. And he goes, I saw a big buck there last year. So we went to the spot, and we drove up in there. It took us about an hour, and it was just getting daylight. And we walked up in and got sat up on this real high messer, they call it, and set the spot and scope, the binoculars up with the tripods. And we started looking, and we glassed, I don't know, a good hour. And I was at the conclusion, no, there's no deer here. And pretty soon, I was uphill, and pretty soon Mike throws a rock at me. You know, because it's so still and quiet, those deer at 500 yards, you even just whisper and they'll hear you. And up in those mountains, it's just, you know, you could hear a pin drop when the wind's not blowing. So he throws a rock at me, and I look around, and he goes, big buck, big buck. So I come down, and he gets set up, and I look in his binoculars, and I could see this buck walking, you know, and I said, yeah, that's a pretty nice buck. And he had one or two times busted on, actually broke his fork off on one side fighting. So I'm thinking, holy cow, that's not a really easy spot to stalk in, because he was walking down this flat, and there was a little river bottom that's choked right in with brush. All those river bottoms are choked in the brush so tight you can't hardly walk up them, and it's just nothing but thorns. So I said, well, and the wind was coming. The wind was kind of coming side to that deer. So I said, well, I'm gonna go down the road we drove up. I said about 500 yards, drop down over across that wash, and then come back. And I said, the way he's walking, maybe he'll run right into me. Well, in the meantime, I did that. I got stalked up, and I figured within 100 yards of that buck and I was going to come up out of that river bottom. And Mike goes, he says, he laid down, Rick. He goes, I lost him. He goes, I'm pretty sure I know right where he is. He says, there's a tree that I think he laid down behind. And I'm like, okay. So I pop up out of there, and then he finally found me, and he goes, okay. He goes, that buck's about 80 yards, because you got an earpiece in when you're hunting out there. And that's legal. That's the way they do it. One guy spots one guy with an earpiece, because you'd never find him in the desert. So he says,
I see Garnett.
I'm thinking about it. That's just got into my armaments, I guess. I don't need a 500-yard muzzleloader. I just need an earpiece.
just an earpiece. Maybe I'll bring you next year.
I'll go with you.
Yeah, I know you will.
I can shoot like 20 yards, with a bow. 500 yards with a muzzleloader. I just want them to make ones good for me for 120.
That's a long shot. So anyway, I was using a crossbow this year because I tore my shoulder snowmobiling last year, and I got a permit because I can't draw my bow right now, and I got stem cells, and it's coming back pretty good, but I haven't tried to draw my bow yet.
I'll show them my belly where I had that surgery. Maybe we can get crossbows.
Maybe. Belly surgery.
Well, I mean, if it's hernia, it would qualify, right?
Right.
You can't pull or lift anything.
I ripped mine apart with a snowmobile. So.
Now, is that surgery, is that going to affect your bikini pictures?
It might.
Uh-oh.
I really don't. I mean, like, I don't think anybody's going to enjoy me in it if I
Everyone will enjoy it, Garnett.
I bought it the size for Sally, so I mean, it's going to look like a thong no matter what I do. Yeah.
We might have to be careful how we take that picture.
Will your
the
man
right angle.
boobs fit the top all right?
For some reason, I don't know how. Like this really had my wife involved and his wife involved. I don't know how we got to this point here. Like this contest wasn't 100% on until he got one. That's what it seemed like. The minute he got one, it was like
It's on now.
It was on all of a sudden, really.
Yeah.
So I'm not next year. I don't care what you guys do for pools or whatever. I'm out.
I'm out.
That's why I'm here today. I'm supposed to get you $50 to make sure you're locked into the pool.
No. I think the last time we were talking, remember me talking?
Oh,
joking?
you gotta be.
I joked with those guys with remember I was like this. I said I'd hate to see you all in your bikinis and stuff. Or naughty nighties, and I'm like, jeez, I don't. If you ever listen to Hal,
You'll shoot the biggest one ever next year.
I've learned tons of stuff from Hal way back. I remember. His wife always made sure that she was like being like an older sister or whatever. She'd always tell me when I was doing something wrong. Hal, I've paid attention to him. Rick, you come by it naturally. You all married beautiful women that take care of you. Back then I was into bimbos or something. And I've learned, but since then I've learned, and I married up, and I've watched him with that. But I've watched Hal, and there's people either love him or hate him. But he's like, I've never heard Hal say I'm the best at what I do or whatever. He's teaching people, but he's like always getting them, like that. There's Garnet. I'm going to get a giant one, buddy. It's going to be so big. Wait till you see it. Run my lip, and then the next thing you know, I was like, hey, Rick, did you get a good one? Oh, I've set the bar pretty high. Or something like that. And then my other buddy Mike's like sending me pictures. I'm like, listen, it's like 14. It's 14 points, Garnet. And I was like, drops. I'm like, oh no, these guys are just like It's bad.
It's bad. It's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was cocky for Aaliyah. I ruined it for her. Technically, I needed her for 3 days because every 3 days I mess up on something. That's Rick.
You're really losing some sleep over last year, aren't you, Garnett?
I am really because
painful memories coming back for you.
Rick can shoot, so he doesn't.
No, I'm not. I can't shoot. I get lucky.
If I had a gun, my gun probably can shoot 1,000 yards. It wouldn't do. You could be like, this is dialed in for 1,000 yards, Garnett. You should never. You'll never
really
miss it.
good with a scope.
I've got a scope that's got 30 power, and I'd be like,
Yeah, I'm good with a scope, but not peep sights.
You need the earpiece.
Well,
you need an earpiece.
I don't know if I'd trust Rick. He'd probably just be having fun. Like you walk over here and it's right there. No, you're close. Keep going.
No, you're almost
turn around. Turn around.
It'd be like I did with Mike when I was with Hal and watching him walk over the hill. I'd be like, "Yep, keep going. It's up there, Mike." I would never tell him the difference, but.
This was kind of an interlude, but I need to hear the rest of Rick's story about his mule deer.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. It is. I know how we got into that.
Oh, the earpiece.
Oh, yes.
All right, so so I come up over this knoll, and I'm just kind of sneaking, crouched down, and he told me, he says, that buck's about 80, 90 yards, he said, right at 2 o'clock from you. And he goes, you see that green tree? Well, I'm looking around, there's about 500 green cactuses and green scrubs, and he named off whatever kind of bush it was, and which is, I've been there 4 years, and I probably know 4 of them out of 400. And I said, yeah, I think so. So I'm looking, and so to jump back a little bit, the first year I went out, I said, when I went mule deer hunting out there with bow and arrow, I said, can you grunt a mule deer? Nope, can't grunt a mule deer. And there was 3 or 4 guys that week I talked to, and I asked them, I said, you ever grunt a mule deer? No, they won't come to a grunt. I brought my grunt this year. So I got behind this big barrel cactus. I snuck right up behind that. It took me about 10 minutes to go about 50 feet, right? So I got behind that, and I felt pretty confident, and I was like 72 yards, I think I shot that buck, 72 or 73 yards when I ranged it. So I said, if he's laying behind that bush, I ranged it, so I knew exactly what it was. And I grunted. I waited, grunted again, waited like 4 or 5 minutes, grunted again. And Mike could hear me grunting at 400 yards away up that hill. Him and Nancy, they could both hear me grunting, and they're like,
what the hell is he doing?
Yeah. So he's like, I don't think, because I figured, I said, well, that deer's going to get up. He's curious anyway, because there's whitetails out there. They call them coos deer out there because they're so small. But I said, he's going to be curious anyway. And he says, man, maybe that buck snuck out of there. He says, I'm starting to second guess myself now. And I'd been sitting there probably 10 minutes by then, and all of a sudden, we were just thinking that I was going to start stalking a little closer, and maybe that buck had dropped down into, because there was another big river bottom on the other side of this little mesa there, this flat mesa all full of cactus and stuff. And we're right up in the mountains. Behind us, it was all just big, big mountains. And so he goes, whoa. He goes, I see antlers. And all of a sudden, that buck, and I think he was just tired, because he was just a bag of bones. You could see every bone in his body was sticking out, and he was all scarred up. He had 2 holes in his neck from fighting, and he had that one busted tie. And I would think he was laying there saying, oh, man, another buck grunting. I got to go fight this guy. So he finally stands up, and he starts posturing, and he's walking sideways, and he's kind of got his head cocked off sideways, and he's walking sideways towards me, just like that. And he just stopped, put his head down, he turned, and I really couldn't shoot because I was knelt down. I was right on my knees, and I couldn't shoot by that cactus where I was. I just needed to get out like another foot. And there was a limb in the way. I could see a limb off that tree he was laying behind. It was like some little bush. So when he looked back to the right, away from me, I just took a short step to the right and moved my body over. And when he picked his head back around, he looked right at me, and I let him have it. And I hit him just above the shoulder, just below the spine, and it dropped him just like a 30-06. Dropped him right to the ground, and Mike's like, holy shit. He says, you got him. He goes, get another arrow in him, get another arrow quick. And he says, I've seen a lot of them run off. So I'm trying to get another arrow put in, and I run up there, and he wasn't going nowhere, but I shot him again anyway.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Finally killed one out there.
Yes.
Yeah, he was like 160-inch buck probably.
Look
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, maybe 170 if he hadn't busted his horns
That
off.
first one you had, the picture you sent, that mule deer is giant.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
with your buddy Fennelson there.
yeah. That was a good trip.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear. We're obviously a track and Northeast
Yeah,
podcast,
but he come.
I
to
always
the,
enjoy hearing different.
he come to that
how they hunt
grunt
in different places like that.
I think he would have come right to me on that grunt if I'd grunted again to him because he got up posturing, so you could tell.
Yeah, your guide out there is probably going to issue grunt tubes to all his hunters now.
He says, "Don't tell a soul." But none of those guys down there listen to our podcast in the Northeast. So,
I'll tell you, a lot of guys from Big Woods this year, that grunt tube was a
oh yeah,
pretty important piece of equipment for a bunch of us.
yeah.
You know what's funny is like I'd never thought about Massachusetts, the places you guys went, and
Yeah.
because of watching this, I had a kid that before I lost. I guess I can tell everybody I lost my Facebook account. posted something that
If you get a friend request from
Hoss Cochran,
because I got the friend request and I'm like, oh, it's spam junk, I just deleted it. I found out this morning that was Garnett.
You see,
I didn't know any of these people that are on your thing here. I know Hal. I mean, I know famous hunters, Rick and Hal and you guys, but they had this kid friend requested me, and I didn't know who he was. And there's this Isaac, Young Isaac he's from Vermont. So
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know who he was, and I put his name like that, and I come up with a YouTube, like that. I'm watching. He reminded me of my Uncle Gordon because he had a kid with him, and he's like, I watched the first one he had, and he's like this. He goes, shoot that thing like that, and it made me think of like a young Gordon talking to us, And I watched him, and then I watched another, and then they showed him in Massachusetts, this big rat deer, and I was like, holy. So I accepted his one, and then I went online, and I saw this girl on there, this Maine girl, like that, and I didn't realize there was this, I didn't know any of these people, but she's on there, and she's doing some dance, says Cocoa Puff. I'm like, who in the hell is this? So I'm putting these names in there, and I come up, and all of a sudden these guys were howling, going dragging. I was like, I want to shoot a crotch horn or something, and just have them come drag it. And there's those guys, the Elmer guys that you said are coming to your
the film festival.
film thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Rodney
this
Elmer.
Cocoa
Yeah.
Puff is one of them guys, and it's like, so I'm watching.
Puff.
Yeah, he is. He's one of them guys. Yes. I was like, I hadn't watched their thing, but at Jace, boy, they got me pumped up because they're like, it wasn't a giant deer, but they're howling when they're coming up to. I'm like, my God, I want to shoot
Yeah,
something.
they have a
them
good
come-
time when they're out there.
I was like, holy cow, I want them to come drag my deer. This is great. And then watch them, and then this girl, and then I got this guy on that Joe that's doing your Osgood. And now he's from friend request. He accepted my Hoss Cochran. None of you guys are.
Because we thought it was
well, no,
porn.
actually,
Who's this guy?
No, he friend requested me actually, but I was like this, and I go, oh my God, you're that guy, because he had. I went and I watched his.
You
wife.
do kind of look like that guy on Bonanza from years ago, but a little grayer.
Yeah.
Hoss.
Well, I put that's the picture on there, by the way. It's not me. But they had his wife and did that, but I watched his, and he's doing this ditty on bear spray, and I was like, geez, I want a case of that stuff. He did such a good job. So I was like, they were all, but I was like, I didn't know any of them, but I'd never thought of hunting. Who to think to go to Massachusetts? And
Yeah.
They had him
Big racks.
big
Big racks down
I was
there.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know how big the deer was, but I was like, holy cow!
That buck I
maybe I
missed
need
was a
to, I couldn't
big
believe
rack
they were
deer.
shooting
He
deer
was a
like
good
that down in that country. They were hunting New Hampshire, Vermont, and that, and I was like,
Yeah.
I've only been out back.
When we went to Massachusetts this year for that thing that we did, they had a buck from Massachusetts. It was a 6-pointer, and it was 160 inches.
Holy cow!
6-pointer. That's a
Wow.
big 6.
Yeah. Wow! I guess that's be a big 8.
Hey, so before I forget, you told me a story Saturday night about
I say?
the car carrier.
I was drinking, remember?
Yeah, that's why he wants you to tell
You
it.
jumped a car carrier.
Oh, I'm not telling that one. That's not a hunting one. I'll tell.
You got to tell it.
I'm not
It's
telling
funny.
that one because it was just so stupid.
You have to tell it
You
now.
gotta-
Brandon.
I'll tell it. I'm going to tell it with a group. We'll do a. Why don't we talk about one
Spring thaw? You
I
going to tell it
watched-
at spring thaw?
No, I will at spring thaw. I'll tell you the one about. I watched him with all his guns. He's out there with all. I've got some of the thing. He pulled out and he had a 357 pistol with a long barrel. I have a Smith & Wesson long barrel pistol. I've only shot one deer with it in my life. It's all because my father, way back, I had a trap line, and my father used to drive me around, to do it till I was 15, and he was so happy, I think, when I got my license. But my father knew me really well because when I was going to go out trapping, he's like, you can only take your pistol. So I had a bunt line. I had a 22 for trapping, and I realized that I had a loophole there because when you like if you look at the law, I mean, if you're always looking, if you're like me, I used to look for loopholes. If they used to have natural holes on the ice, I used to go out. You know how they used to be able to. I used to go put Slade out, on the end of the year in a garbage bag until I got a ticket for it. And that's why they ended it, But anyways, I was looking. My father told me, he goes, you can only hunt with a pistol, and he didn't realize. I went and I had a weight set, and I went and I traded my weight set for this 357 big long barrel. And it was better anyways because I was getting so built. The women were just going crazy for me, I had to say that because all the girls in Dexter good looking. They just couldn't leave me alone. So I had to. If I had kept on weightlifting, it would have been bad. But so anyways, I had that 357, and I went. You know how the cops used to have those speed loads? They had the little round thing. You put it in and pull them out. Back then, they didn't use the semi-autos as much. I bought 2 of those for it, thinking of getting some action or whatever. And I had this big long trap line that went all the way up to, my theory back then is that the further you go with them long lines, you catch more fur, but you still have to know how to trap. I went across the CC road. I used to go there, and I'd get to Moxie, and I'd go down the old railroad bed. I'd go from there, and I'd go over to Brighton, and I'd go across the Iron Gate Road out to Brighton, and then I'd swing all the way back around Cambridge. I had this big giant loop. Occasionally I'd catch something. I had a Blazer that I had a 2.4 barrel, so I got a mile a gallon. So my trap line didn't really
Pay for
off.
the gas.
No. But I had that pistol, and I remember going across the CC road, and it wasn't far from the Shirley Bog. You go across the bog and going out on that stretch after that. And I look in front of me, I see a doe in the road. And back then, I think it still could shoot it. I hope. Because I was trying to load my pistol, put that speed load. And when you get it, I looked in front of me again. When I looked down, looked up, there's a buck. I go, and I was still trying to, and they made it harder to load the pistol, actually. So I finally got that thing in there, slapped it shut, and I got out, got myself between the truck doors, and I got it aimed. He's right there sideways, looking straight down the road at me, maybe 40 yards or something like that. I fired, and he just stood there, which I thought I'd hit him. So I shot, and then he stood there again. And I think the next shot he started to run, and I go bang, 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 like that right after, and he folded up. And I go, oh my God, I got him. So I was all excited, and then I got scared because I was 15, which is you're not legal to be by yourself with a deer, So I went over to I drove up to the deer. I parked my truck up with me, and I was really, like I said, kind of semi-worried. I dragged it, and I loaded the deer guts and all into the truck, and then I headed straight across, and I was going down to the store. My grandfather had berries, but that wasn't where they tagged them then. And I come driving in, and back then Gordon didn't work in the store during hunting season. He was always hunting or trapping. And I got in there, and I told my grandfather what I'd done, and then I told him I hadn't gutted it because he was going to go, I had to go get Bob Wag. If you ever watched the movie Dead River Rough Cut, was in there at the store, and he went with me. We went out and gutted it, and we went across and tagged it. But I was like, I got it with that pistol, but everybody thought I made this great shot when they looked at it. Remember I was telling you I was aiming behind the shoulder? I hit it way up by its ear. You know, so I looked. They're like, wow, what a great shot. And I'm sitting there, and I was like 3 feet from where it aimed. You know, with 5 shots. You know, so that was my only. I've never hunted with a pistol since. So yeah, but
You were slinging lead like a gunslinger, huh?
that's what I felt like. I was like, it went fast. You know, I think I got 5. I don't know if I got all of them out or not, but I know I had that speed.
You got one into him anyway.
I got 1 out of the 5 into him, but we'll tell that dirt bike story when it's. I'm not gonna. You know what it is? I can't drink with Rick anymore. I guess because he's just he's like Gordon. He gets the stories out of you or something. Gordon is like, he'll be like, did you shoot at anything today, Garnet? And you just can't help yourself. You'll be like, well, I missed one. You know, I missed a good one in where I brought Leah. So I'm like, besides the one I missed with Leah. So there you go. I've missed 2 now. So and with a grunt, this is the other thing. You guys are talking about your grunt tube. I'm going to throw mine in the garbage because I went in there and it's like I never have luck with my grunt tube. And I was following a really nice buck. It's so quiet. And I got out there and I was like, I don't know. I blew on it. It sounded like a cow right next to me. I've never had one answer me like that. I've heard them grunting, walking. It was like I was like, and I mean, I was like looking into the furs just like that, and I was like going, "Oh my God, he's right here! He's coming! He's right here!" I was like this. I go, "I'm going to see movement any second," and all of a sudden I see the moose get up and running that way. He was running, and then I see him bouncing out through. He's probably like 70 yards in. So like this one, I have an excuse, but I tried, you know, but I was like. I evidently blew on it wrong, but he answered me the first one. I've never had one just like automatic. It's so quiet. I don't know why I did it. I was following his track and I climbed up on a high spot and looking to see if I could see around. And I just got off his. Remember, I told you I'd go off their track. Yeah. I guess I should have stayed on it because
you never know.
I don't know. I just and the worst thing is I chased him. I didn't do what Uncle Hal says about waiting, which might have helped. Because I started right after it. I was like, well, that's a good one. Go down right through, and that snow was so heavy. It hadn't had any wind yet. And I got he went right through a plantation. I had snow all over me. All of a sudden, I hear a shot. And a group of Vermont hunters, they weren't as good as the other guys that Leah and I saw. These guys are more like, they go in there, sit, whatever. I drove one right up by them. And there was a nice deer, but they missed it. Because I stayed there a long time to see if they brought him out. Because I was like, oh, man, what's the odds of pushing a deer to somebody in there? But I went from the road, and you'd know where it is. Before the brook, there's a road goes in, there's rocked off, and it goes into the back of it. The back cuts, and maybe you'd know. But Hal would know. Hal would know, but he would.
Probably been there.
He's probably shot one there. I don't know, but he probably didn't grunt like 15 feet from it. You know, but I've never had a deer that sounded that close and sounded like a cow. So I was like, just stunned me because I was like, he's right here, and I just thought, but I don't know if he winded me.
I had one in Ontario one year. Me and Sandy and Vince Dostey went out one of the first years, and I was tracking this buck, and I got to a spot, and there was a big swamp off to my right, and I grunted, and that buck grunted at me, and he was literally 8 or 10 feet away.
Wow.
He was that close, and I think he heard me pull my gun up because I went like that, and I never even heard him run off. He just like tiptoed off, and Vince ended up shooting him. I stayed on his track, and he came out on the logging road, and Vince shot him there in a chopping. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, probably Hal wouldn't have done.
That's the closest one I ever
you
had.
I did everything you wouldn't have do, Hal. That's why I'm gonna like I was joking with Leah a couple times. I said we got to get out Hal's book right now because like I don't know what to do. We're not. I'm like, like if I blew it on something, but I'm like,
you know what we're gonna do? Speaking of that, where back years ago, when me and Chris first started with this, we come up with this tracking card. It's a pocket tracking guide, and we had some made up, and because that's before we was, I just had written the first book, and people didn't know me that much or whatever, but it really never we sold. We ended up over the years selling them all, but we never had any more made, and so we're going to bring that back. It's a cool little thing because it's just a little.
Yeah.
Well, it was made on like waterproof plastic,
little hard plastic,
and
right.
it was right from the beginning what you do. Like from it had a little measure on it, and it showed pictures of a track and a scale to measure them, and it showed you the stance and the stride and how far that was. It was really something so somebody could take it and into the woods with them in their pocket if they had a question. And when you come to certain things, you had choices. The buck did this, so you turn the page and you go, I got 3 choices here. I can do this, this, or this. It's pretty cool.
Would you have multiple cards, or it was like a little?
It was like a little notebook, a spiral.
Yeah.
It had a spiral.
It's like a little pocket guide.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
fit right in your pocket.
Yeah. Nice.
And it had a spiral bound on the top, and you could just, you could take it through the woods and just flip the spiral over and keep going on the track.
Right.
And so, anyways, we're gonna bring that back, and then the other thing we're gonna work on this year was a grunt call.
Yeah.
Have a couple of you guys decide.
Yeah.
What tone you want, and we're gonna come up with our own Big Woods grunt call. That's kind of more Big Woods.
Leah's going to
specific,
get open that book and say, Garnet didn't show me that. It's funny. We got in there. There's one good thing that I know I was right. We got in there and we had seen some deer going under this. The one we started on had a big rack, had something on there because he went first place. We had 2 or 3 deer went under, and he went way out and around it. And then I kept showing. Then we see a couple big rubs, but I was showing her. I said, "Boy, for in here, he's got a good rack because sometimes he at least got something out there."
Right. Yeah, at least wide. I got on
wide. That's
this
what he
year.
was.
I got on one that I knew he had a tall rack because he when he'd go underneath some firs or something, the snow way up high was knocked off, and I'm like, that guy got some headgear sticking up there because he was knocking snow that you would never think they would. Because they can duck pretty low with their head there, but yeah, he was knocking snow everywhere like that. I'm like, I get a look at him, but I never did. Yeah.
Huh.
You know what? You're almost finishing up?
No.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, way back, I remember first time I never met you till I saw you on the Shop and Tave.
Met
But
who?
our good lady.
Hey, when you're on the radio,
Oh, you gotta say-
they can't see you pointing, Garnet.
Well, I was going to say good. He's good. He's the goodly, right?
The good
And I
lead.
remember, I can't remember where, but I remember them. I saw something about you, and it's talking about you always using a different gun. And I don't remember what I read something or whatever. I just remember because I'd read an article you'd been in something, and it's talking about you liked shooting them with different guns.
Probably one of Hannerhan's articles he wrote about you.
Yeah, I'm not sure,
Yeah,
but
somebody did.
I love guns so much that when I was younger, before I started the guide business, I'd get a new gun every year. I collected pre-64 Model 70s and Savage 99s, and if I got a new one, because I'd get them in different calibers, I wanted to shoot a buck with those new guns. So back then I shot bucks about every year with a different gun, but I almost always now I hunt with a 99 Savage.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I've kind of settled in. Although I never owned a Remington pump other than an 870. I shot my first big buck when I was 12 or 13 years old. I shot a 200-pound buck up in Cocajo with a beautiful, big, heavy 8-point. I shot that with an 870 12 gauge. And then my second buck that I shot just before I got out of high school was with that same 870 12 gauge.
Yep.
But those are the only 2 deer I ever shot with a Remington pump. Then when I started hanging out with all these guys in Big Woods, Hal convinced me that I needed to have some. So I don't know, how many years ago did we buy all those Remington pumps?
Oh, just 2-3 years ago. 3 years ago, maybe.
I bet it was longer than that.
Huh?
Those when we bought those 25
No, we
Remington
bought
pumps. But anyway, so I ended up buying some Remington pumps, and now I've got a Remington 760 and 300 Savage, and Steven, my boy, shot a big buck with it last year. But I think I'm probably going to shoot a big buck with that before too long. So I've got a Remington pump.
There's a guy down in the forest that my uncle offered the gun to my cousin. I wish I'd known about it. It was Warren Ricker. When I was telling you, he shot hundreds and hundreds of deer with his. He had a 300 Savage, but they're all semi-auto open sights. And my grandfather, both of those, that's what they used, was the 300, the old 300. With, I guess it didn't jam like the, like the.
Oh, it was probably one of those old Model 8 Remington semi-auto.
No, they hunted with a Savage.
With a Savage, okay.
Yeah, there's an old, not a Savage, yeah. Is the 300? Yeah, it's old 300. But as you look at it, it's really old. I mean, these guys were hunting way before me. But that guy shot tons of deer, kind of like Rick. I have to say, right now I can't say a word bad about my buddy Rick. It's like everything because he is holding most of the cards for. I don't want to be at spring thaw just swimming out front here.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
I'm guessing that's what there'll be a chainsaw out there. And
we'll cut a slot. We'll see you.
I might come up a day ahead of time, get that ready.
Yeah.
I bet you would.
Yeah. Be out there doing the breaststroke.
I don't know.
I just the other day, I never really thought about it before, but over the years I've hunted 6 provinces in Canada. From New Brunswick all the way to Alberta, every single one of them, in 18 different states. Wow. I've hunted whitetails, and muleys.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yep, my family were guides in New Brunswick and
had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah.
But
well,
good podcast,
good stories.
Yeah,
always fun.
Yeah. So, anything before we wrap up? We got to have people subscribe to our channel, buy the gear. I mean, geez, you guys have you guys got jackets on.
Yeah, actually, the jackets are going to be available on the website. And this is the first run jacket, so it's the ones. Yep. And we did. There was definitely we went through stuff with the sleeves, but most of them everyone kept and liked them. Like Rick was saying, he just. I
just got one, and I'm pretty fussy on my jackets. And you've never seen me with a Big Woods buck jacket on before, and probably wondered why, because they just never fit me right. And that jacket you guys gave me the other day fits perfect. I mean that's the best fitting jacket I've had in 20 years.
And that was the ones with the quote unquote shorter sleeves.
Right.
So we are going to have.
You're
those.
talking to a model,
right? We ought to get we'll have to get a picture of him with it on it and get him on the website.
I'll tell you who would notice that is Leah. When we were riding in there, she's probably going to hate my guts now. I was like, we were riding in there, and she goes, "You notice she had a big?" I don't notice things like she did. She goes, "That guy had a big woods buck jacket on." Yeah. They passed us in the truck, and she, they did. Whoa,
observant.
Yeah, she spotted.
Yeah. Yep. So there's going to be the green and black checked, and then the solid green, which are the lighter weight. They're the 18 ounce.
That's the one I got. Solid. Yep.
And that's actually what's nice about that one is you take the vest off. It's just a great everyday jacket for around.
Well, the other thing we decided on too, speaking of that clothing stuff, was we're going to make. We bought the 18 ounce wool that we made some jackets for the pants, because a lot of people wanted the lighter pants, but we had forgot that we had 100 and something yards of 24 ounce solid green that we'd already bought. It was something that they had there, so we said, yeah, we'll take it. So we're going to make pants out of that too. So we'll have, when the pants come out here, whenever, pretty shortly, by summer, we'll have 2 weights. We'll have a lightweight 18 ounce wool pant and then a 24 ounce heavier one. So that'll be cool. Getting a little variety going anyways. Well, thanks for tuning in, and till next time, good luck on the trail.
Hi everyone, team member Mark Sheeran here. I've been helping people solve their addictions for the last 34 years. In 2017, we published the revolutionary non-12-step book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. If you'd like a free paperback copy sent directly to you, go to freebook.freedommodel.org. That's freebook.freedommodel.org. All right, take care.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're 4-season lodge located just south of Jackman. We've got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open all obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And, of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlandlodge.com.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.